While Alice Weidel is warning about something important, the mainstream media are doing something to distract you. Because you know they'd rather push their own narratives than show the truth. One of their favorites in the US, for example, who is constantly hyped up as an expert, is once again extremely bullish on Bitcoin and wants people to increasingly accept cryptocurrencies and crypto in general. The reason behind it? Digital central bank currencies. But that's not all. Bitcoin is currently breaking out compared to stocks. Money is flowing from a $48 trillion market into a $1.4 trillion rocket. Why? People are simply fed up with stocks. Google, Apple, Amazon, they're done. You get it? The returns that used to be normal just aren't there anymore. And now it's all about Bitcoin. A maximum of 21 million Bitcoin, no stock splits, no new shares. Finally, a limited supply that can't just be printed or created out of thin air, unlike with stocks, for example. And hey, the stock market is only open a few hours a day and closed 2 days a week. The next generation absolutely won't put up with that. They want a free market 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without trading halts or artificial breaks when things really get wild. Bitcoin offers exactly that, and it's getting crazier and crazier. The US Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, comments on the falling dollar and says, "Other currencies are rising, the dollar isn't falling." And to that, we'll take a quick look at a short clip from Alice Weidel of the AFD in a moment. And the people in government, whether in the US or elsewhere, have absolutely no idea. Even the so-called experts just spout their pre-written scripts, puppets really. The dollar is falling because the central bank is printing it like crazy, creating it out of thin air. Every 80 days in the US, $1 trillion is created out of nothing. And then there are the tariffs. Walter Bloomberg quotes Deutsche Bank here. A 40% dollar crash could wipe out the US trade deficit. The dollar has already fallen by 8.3% this year thanks to Trump's aggressive tariffs. Of course, investors are losing confidence. Who knows what the US central bank will do next? Prices will rise, inflation will eat up savings. 92% of retirees are afraid of this, according to Fortune magazine. Crazy, isn't it? But Bitcoin remains scarce while everything else is imploding. Even Alice Weidel from the AFD warns about the problems with the euro. She even says, "We are trapped in the euro." The euro is a dying, highly inflationary currency that basically devours everything.
We are trapped in the euro. The euro is a dying, highly inflationary currency. So next, not only will there be walls against the free movement of workers, but also capital controls. People, Europeans, impoverished Europeans, will no longer be allowed to escape from their decaying currency, for example, into the Swiss franc. That's why it will be made more difficult, and later the exchange of euros into Swiss francs will simply be prohibited. That's one thing. And then the third point is a ban on gold. You won't be allowed to own any gold at all. So here too, the threshold for anonymous gold purchases was lowered to 2,000 euros. That's a ridiculous amount because the EU wants to register everything. They want to introduce asset registers.
There are already efforts moving in that direction.
Yes, asset registers. That's what they're doing now.
Yes, asset registers, exactly.
Yes, exactly. They're now conducting a general inventory here so that later they can really get their hands on things through asset taxation. Everything is supposed to be made transparent. People are to be squeezed dry, and that's exactly the opposite. I don't want to go into more detail about this, maybe in the next conversation, but I think that's enough as an outlook. These are exactly the mechanisms we've already seen historically. Germans should actually be used to times of hyperinflation, the Equalization of Burdens Act, and currency collapse. But they're not because they're no longer taught about this history in schools. That's why they simply don't know about it anymore, especially the younger generation. And I'll tell you, the euro will not survive, and people are already experiencing a redistribution of wealth through inflationary developments. But in the future, they will lose all their assets and everything completely. And that's the outlook, and that's exactly what these people want. Everything is being set up to oppress people more and more and to take everything away from them, and that should be warning enough for everyone.
So you see, the middle class is finished. They won't make it anymore unless they invest in Bitcoin, own real estate, and understand money. Without that, the next generation will be quite poor. Trump is threatening Apple with 25% tariffs if iPhones aren't produced in the USA. This is putting more and more pressure on the US dollar. It has already dropped again and will continue to fall. And people are slowly starting to realize what I've been saying since Trump's tariffs. The US economy is going to suffer because of this. Basically, it's the consumers in the US and around the world who bear the burden, not the companies. And on the topic of stablecoins, the US Treasury is pushing digital assets. The stablecoin bill is just the beginning. Basically, they're normalizing CBDCs, that is, central bank digital currencies, right before your eyes. Soon you'll have a wallet that they control, just like in China. USDC, the stablecoin, is becoming the digital dollar, and people aren't seeing what's happening right now. Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short, is warning about a financial crisis like in 2008. He sold 99% of his stocks, and I also believe that a huge bear market is coming. And I'm not focusing on stocks as much anymore. Since I discovered crypto, stocks have basically just become boring. But in crypto, prices can drop 40 to 70%, even 80% during a bear market. And if you think it's going to be different this time, then just be happy. Bitcoin has risen 53% since 2023, even though Jim Cramer advised selling back then, the anti-oracle.
Please don't assume, therefore, that it's not still being manipulated. And I would sell my Bitcoin right into this rally. And believe me, I had been a believer in Bitcoin at one time. Not here, not now.
And the mainstream media want to keep you poor and sick. They put people like Cramer on display, for example, who have no idea, so that you become their exit liquidity. They hate Bitcoin because it's scarce and could make you rich, and crypto, of course, too. CNBC, the news channel, basically only exists to keep you poor. And then there's Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who simply dropped the investigation into the Libra scandal. All of them are fraudsters.
Javier Milei was significantly involved in the multi-million-dollar fraud involving the cryptocurrency Libra.
Legally speaking, he was an essential participant. Without his tweet, no one would have bought this currency, this coin, and of course, if no one had bought it, the fraud wouldn't have been possible.
On Friday evening, February 14th, Javier Milei promoted a meme coin on his social media accounts. After this announcement, the virtual currency collected millions of dollars within minutes, only to crash afterwards. But what is a meme coin?
These are things that are suitable for scams because ultimately this was a scam. That's what it's called. They're basically joke currencies. That means, for example, you and I could create a currency where the joke is that nobody wants it. It's really just about us and the community we have, and it has no value. It's a game that we're playing. Suddenly, if someone with a lot of influence comes along and says, buy this currency that this small group, this community has created, then there will certainly be people who want to buy it, and the price will start to rise.
Libra hit the market at exactly the moment Milei published his message. In just 45 minutes, the value of the currency rose from $0 to almost $5.
The tokens, which you could compare to shares in a way, 80% of all tokens of this meme coin were held by just 3 or 4 wallets. And of course, when the price hit a peak of $5, these wallets sold everything and the price crashed.
Experts point out that tens of thousands of people lost money within just a few hours. Milei tried to distance himself from the matter. He deleted the original tweet and assured the next day that he was not familiar with the details of the project. But what is Milei's connection to this cryptocurrency?
In Milei's case, it is demonstrably true. There are many photos showing that he and his closest advisors are heavily involved in the project. It is still unknown whether he received any kind of compensation for this action or what exactly the project was.
In a field that is not yet regulated by law, analysts are debating whether Milei committed any illegality. The Argentine judiciary has launched an investigation into fraud against the president, and both the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI have received complaints against the Argentine president.
His institutional role as president is involved in this, and it is very likely that the legal proceedings already initiated in the U.S. will ultimately not affect him personally, since he is not a wealthy man, but rather the Argentine state. All Argentine citizens, all of us, will have to pay for this fraud.
And finally, Kevin O'Leary from the US, who says that Bitcoin is the only crypto that billions will buy.
I love the idea of innovation. The money center banks have been sitting on their hands for years, crapping on the crypto industry, but it's not about Bitcoin. Nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's digital payment systems. That's the potential. That's the amazing opportunity we have here. Now, the reason that will be important and why we'll get price appreciation on Bitcoin is the minute that happens, it will signal the move to the next act, the Market Infrastructure Act. And why that matters to everybody in this room is we will finally determine, is Bitcoin a commodity or a security? And when that is determined and regulated, Katie, bar the doors, $1 trillion will come in and index that asset.
We hope all of this happens while we're still alive. Otherwise, thank you very much. You should know, I don't trust any of these mainstream people. You should go into Bitcoin and crypto, not into a system that they propose. And Kevin O'Leary even went on to say that the price of Bitcoin will explode and also that crypto will become the 12th sector and will compete with the banking industry in the US.
Crypto will be the 12th sector of the economy within 5 years because it's so productive for the other sectors just in digital payments alone. Just think about what happened when Robinhood bought WonderFi. You can now transfer currency right across the border without using a bank. That's a trillion-dollar industry, and it's ancient. It's technology that's 60 years old, with really high fees. Now, if you have a wallet in Canada and a wallet in the US, you just make a transaction with a stablecoin. That's brilliant.
I basically agree with Kevin O'Leary. I do agree in principle. But listen, when suddenly more and more celebrities start talking about Bitcoin, about crypto, who previously hardly dealt with it at all, then that's basically a warning signal. It shows that the market is slowly reaching its peak. Not immediately, but it's one piece of the puzzle among many. The more stars, media outlets like CNBC with daily crypto experts, or even friends and family start giving you tips, the closer we get to the peak of the bull market. And you'll see people Googling en masse or asking AI, which coin should I buy today? That's exactly the moment when things get critical. I'm not selling yet, but I'm keeping an eye on these signals, and many people will exit too late and hold on to their profits until the bitter end, until everything crashes by 80 to 90%. That's why I advise you, don't get blinded by the hype. It's better to learn early how to act strategically, how to build your own crypto financial freedom. If you want to know more about this, click the link in the description. Also, listen to other voices who don't panic at every price drop. And if you've already experienced several bull runs, you'll recognize the patterns, and those who suddenly appear as experts now often drag the uninformed down with them. So be smarter than the crowd or you'll end up empty-handed. Take care of yourself and your investments. I wish you a wonderful day.